Taishale, welcome to the AWAM Tibetan Buddhist Institute and our Sunday class, The Heart Essence of Tibetan Buddhism. We are in the third part of that, which originally had intended to cover three chapters, but as I was working on it, it was a little bit over the top, so I'm going to just do the first two of those chapters today. But let us begin with taking a deep breath in and then slowly out again, as we have done before. So in and out. Calming your mind. In and out. One more. And we should abide in a state of peace and calm and contentment as we do those kind of things. It is the essence of what most forms of meditation are all about. So we're going to begin here, chapter 5. As noted earlier, the path of individual liberation, or the Pali tradition, comes closest to what was originally taught by the historical Buddha during his lifetime. It provides a solid foundation upon which to build the subsequent teachings that evolved from them. And for some, it will even provide all that is necessary to achieve liberation. This path is respected by all Buddhist traditions and sometimes referred to as the path of the elders, or the path of renunciation, or the path of the Nikayas, referring to the Pali Canon. While the original Pali Canon, upon which these teachings are based, are the most ancient and close to the historical Buddha, the texts currently available are only about 300 to 500 years old, and most are less than even that. So the oldest complete text of the canon is from the 1800s, so not all of that long. There are only fragments from earlier texts. So we begin with chapter 5 here, the first training on ethics. So ethics, meditation, and insight or wisdom. So we start with ethics. In the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, training in ethics was a preliminary practice to learning meditation. So we learned ethics first before we learned to meditate. Today, there are many vows in the Buddhist tradition associated with each of the three paths: the path of individual liberation, the path of altruism, and the path of Tantra. While ethics have to do with what is right or wrong, the dilemma has always been how to determine that. How do we know? And in some cases, who determines that? The Buddhist principle approach to the householders was whether it was beneficial to your path to liberation. So if it was helpful, then that's good. If it was unhelpful, then that was a problem. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama has summarized the three vows as do good, or at least to do no harm. That's the first one. Or the second, engage in altruistic intention and action. And third is maintaining pure view. So as we go through these courses, this course, we will encounter those things with more explanation and so forth. But basically, all beings, are viewed as being Buddhas or teachers. All sounds as mantra, the Buddhist speech. All thoughts as the wisdom of a Buddha. And all phenomena as the mandala, the Buddha field, the abode of a Buddha, or Dharmadhatu, as it's sometimes referred. The sphere of ultimate reality. But when you face difficulty in determining the right action, there are more specific guidelines that have been developed to assist you. To some degree, those more specific vows have become rules in the tradition, especially for monks and nuns. They have literally hundreds of rules. But they should not be seen that way for householders. As described in Chapter 3, we must use the 4 reliances to help guide us as we apply these things. So it's not about the teacher, it's about the words of the teacher and so forth that we talked about before. For us, these 3 simple vows are enough. Nevertheless, it does help to examine at least some of these more specific vows to see how they have been applied within the tradition. So first, it's important to be aware of the concept of karma. I'm sure you've heard of that term. Literally, it just means actions. So karma is the foundation of Buddhist ethics. Actions have consequences, cause and effect. It provides a basis for good or right actions and avoiding consequences of bad or wrong actions. Flexible approaches to ethics, sometimes referred to as situational ethics, you may have heard of that phrase, allow for greater interpretation to fit changing times and varying circumstances. Nevertheless, they may also create potential problems when extended to the level of absolute reality. That is, nothing is right or wrong. Everything is relative. The effect of that approach is that there are few, if any, guidelines for ethical behavior through that approach. Some Shramanans, groups of yogis who practiced extreme forms of asceticism, which the Buddha participated in prior to his liberation and enlightenment. At the time of the Buddha, they were believed in principle of karma. So it was a fairly common belief in the idea of karma and good karma versus bad karma. So this is a form of what goes around, comes around. Karma means action, as I mentioned. So what comes around is based on our actions, cause and effect. However, this does not explain why bad things sometimes happen to good people or good things sometimes happen to bad people. And we see that in our culture. Sometimes people that are very good, problems happen in their lives. And the vice versa. People who are really bad sometimes get away with all kinds of things. So that doesn't quite fit that generic idea of karma. So karma came to be thought of as a process of planting seeds. When we do something good or bad, a seed is planted in our subconsciousness, referred to as the alaya consciousness or storehouse consciousness. If we repeat this, it is strengthened and may even become a habit. From brain research, we see hard evidence for this, the plasticity of the brain, which forms and strengthens neural connections, the wiring that's going on in our brains, based on our behaviors, including thoughts, words, and deeds. So those things are causing those connections to be either made initially or strengthened over time. But the law of karma goes beyond this. This alaya consciousness, in which the seeds are said to be planted, is also said to transcend this life. That is, it goes after we die. It continues on. And it becomes the cause for us to be reborn, reincarnation. In the next life, with those same propensities based on our previous actions, unless they are burned up through affecting our life or purified through one or many advanced practices. So when we do earn some good things and then we benefit from that, then that one's gone. And so we have to build up more good ones, and vice versa with the old ones or the bad ones. And we do something bad, then once we receive well, it wouldn't be the good, it would be the harm from that, then we also that is washed away and we start over again. But it depends on how deeply we've already embedded all of those things in our lives. So unless they get burned up in that sense through affecting our life or purified through one of many advanced practices, for example, Vipassana, one that we'll look at when we get to Tantra, if you may not be familiar with that, is a process of basically washing all of those problems out from our mind and our body. So it is a cycle of reincarnation due to karma that the Buddha sought to transcend through training the mind and ethical actions. So if you find karma and reincarnation difficult to accept, but act as if you did believe, you will do the right thing anyway. So it is a helpful way of understanding. As noted, so now we want to look at the first vow. As noted, we have 3 sets of vows. Do good, or at least do no harm, would be the first one. Engage in altruistic intention and action, that's the second one. And maintain pure view, which is an idea that we'll get to much later. It's kind of challenging, particularly in terms of science that we look at today. The most basic of these Buddhist vows is to do good. That is, to benefit others. Interestingly, Mark Twain once said, "Always do right. This will gratify some people and astonish the rest." We ask, are my actions of benefit to others? As noted earlier, you must consider the issue of self-interest versus others, ego, selfishness. Self-interest is often a barrier to our spiritual realization. Western society is heavily engaged in self-interest, and we're all aware of that these days. It's all about me, me, me. And so it often goes to the extreme. Some self-interest is actually a benefit to others, of course. If we do not take care of ourselves, we will be unable to benefit others. It is excessive self-interest that is the barrier. At the same time, ethics go beyond a balance of self and other interests. You must go beyond self to extinguish our ego as a point of focus. When others become our focus, we find that we are the beneficiaries of countless ways. So the idea isn't to absolutely get rid of self, although that's often articulated that way in Buddhism. It gets divided into 2 characters that we'll look at later. One of them is self in terms of ego. The other one is self in terms of a soul. And the Buddha kind of divided those into 2 different categories. So the idea here is that we often see sacrifice, surrender, and generosity as standards of behavior in religious traditions. So there are things that we can do to help benefit others. And that's basically universal across religious traditions. As with other standards, it cannot be applied in an absolute manner. There are circumstances that sometimes may condition our ideal response. So if you are unable to do good, the precept is also at least do no harm. Okay? So ideally we want to do good, but if for one reason or another we can't, then do no harm, or the least amount of harm in some cases. So the classical formulation is the choice between lesser of 2 evils here. Either choice involves some harm, but it cannot always be helped. Nevertheless, as a general guiding principle, do no harm is a very helpful standard. Ethical standards are often most effective as general principles. In Buddhism, these are articulated as vows, samaya, but these vows are based on what has been shown to be beneficial in training the mind, not a rigid set of standards. They are conditioned by the circumstances. And so the Buddha actually talks about that in a number of his teachings, that these circumstances will affect whether or not, or the degree to which these things are negative in their effects. So the key detriment of making ethical choices is your intention. The Buddha emphasized that very strongly. It's not always that strong in later traditions, as we may see, but that was the way that he looked at it. Karma isn't about, karma means action. So an action by itself could be either good or bad. And so then you have to determine whether or not it was one versus the other as a part of that, and whether or not you took that action intentionally or not. So we may not always know the right action in a given case, but as long as our intention is good, we do no harm. Or prevent others from doing harm, our intention is wholesome as a part of that. So in these instances, we are doing our best. We should not be afraid to defend our actions in the face of others' criticism. If we honestly do our best and then find later that the action did cause some harm, then genuine regret and renewed intention to these principles is the best course of action. So there are also purification rituals, which we will find a little later. The Vajrasattva one that I mentioned just a bit ago is an example of that. And those are designed to help assist with the process. When we make mistakes, we do something that is harmful. So long before the Vedic sources are a set of 5 wholesome acts that are a guide to civil society. Those include no killing, no lying, no adultery, no stealing, and no alcohol. These are fairly universal in many religious traditions, although some vary here and there. They were adopted in the Vedas as well as later by the Buddha, with some apparent minor changes, becoming the ethical foundation for householders and monastics alike. Now, monastics have a lot of other rules too, but for lay practitioners or householders, those are the key. In Buddhism, these are not prescribed. You choose to follow those that do not interfere with spiritual practice and development. In addition, you should use skillful means in determining the exact choice of behavior in any given situation based on the 3 vows listed before. The most common list in Buddhism have 10 unwholesome actions to avoid and 10 wholesome actions to follow. They're antidotes, if you will. And so these are listed in the book. So the first column are the 10 unwholesome actions, and the second column are the 10 wholesome actions. So when you do one of the bad ones, then the one on the other side tells you what the correct action should be to offset that. So we'll go through those very quickly. So for killing, we protect life instead of killing. Instead of stealing, we engage in generosity. Instead of sexual abuse, we honor sexual vows and respect others. We avoid lying, and we tell truth with loving speech. We avoid divisiveness and try to reconcile or harmonize when that occurs. We avoid harsh words and instead replace those with pleasant words. We avoid idle talk and replace those with meaningful talk. We avoid jealousy, and here we replace that with rejoicing. And harmful thoughts are avoided, and instead we replace those by helpful intentions to benefit others. And finally, we replace wrong views with the wisdom of ultimate truth and the true nature of things. So that gets into the philosophical understanding that we will look at later on. Our politicians could benefit greatly from these, in my opinion. Not everyone is capable from following the same level of ethical thinking and behavior. Researchers have found, for example, that humans follow a pattern of ethical and moral development just as we do with physiological development, the growth of things in our body and so forth. At early stages, you make choices based on rewards or the risk of punishment. Our focus is on me. Later on, we discover or we consider reciprocity of what others are willing to do for us, often articulated as, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. But the focus is still on me. I'll do them, but only if I get back what I really want. Following this stage, we begin to decide based on our need for approval of others, like family, peers, and others. Established principles of law and order guide our choices at the next stage. Here, the focus is on we, the group. Many adults do not develop beyond this level. At the next level, you tend to behave in accordance with expectations with the broader social contract, as it's referred in our particular society. Not real broad virtue, but within a smaller conventional group. You begin to truly transcend self-interest, let go of self-interest and focus on others. Our focus shifts from me to you. Finally, you may reach a stage in which fairness and need transcend the social ethic or even legal barriers. At this level, we may see a very small group of extraordinary individuals who are willing even to die for a noble cause that will benefit others, even if they are in a minority. So we also see those kind of things. Or you see somebody who risks their own life to save the life of somebody else. Those kind of things fit into that category as well. This is the state of egoless altruism. So it's not about our ego at all. It's about doing something that needs to be done for the benefit of others. While some have argued that altruism does not fit within the evolutionary development of our species for survival, in fact, there is evidence that altruism does help preserve and protect the group as a whole. It doesn't necessarily protect all together, but groups, they are protected within those kind of principles. And many of those most recent brain developments in the brain evolution are focused more on group survival than on individual survival. Okay? So those are important principles that help us understand the approach of Buddhism. So let's look at some signs of accomplishment. The signs are twofold. First, we must assess our own actions. We are the only ones who can assert, for example, our intention. Now we can look, others will see some of the actions that we engage in, but the intention is key here. And we are the only ones who have the collective view of all that we have done in a given day. Everybody else gets bits and pieces. So keep track. That's part of what we do in our practice is monitor our ethical activities throughout the day. One of the benefits is that it helps focus our attention during the day on our actions, another form of training our mind. So this is just part of learning the process. Do this practice daily for at least 1 week or a month to develop it as a habit. Now, habits have been shown to take approximately 1 month to a year, so this could take longer, of regular repetition, which can be applied here as well. So the second way that I mentioned is to assess our behavior based on what others perceive about us. Now, this isn't as easy a one to do. You have to ask. Some people will tell you whether our actions, specific or general, are seen as good or bad. But most of the time we will get more information if we ask over and over again. So this may take a while, and we may go back. We don't want to do it minute by minute or even day by day, but maybe by week or month or something like that is more realistic. But research shows that most of us don't really know very accurately how we are perceived by others. To get them honestly tell us requires cultivating open and honest communication with others, and then asking them with some regularity to give some honest feedback. Beware though, you may not like what you learn, but under no circumstances should you ever be repercussions for that honesty. That would destroy the trust as well as undermine the ethical behavior. Thank them for, and bite your lip if necessary, but never ever defend yourself, though it is okay to ask more details and explanation. This is part of training your mind. First, it necessitates paying attention. Then it requires staying focused on what you are doing, even as you do it. This means breaking away from automatic pilot, so to speak, to be awake at all times, including our mindfulness, our focused attention, the effortless presence, 3 different terms that we often see in Buddhism. From the book, The Life of Shabkar, he was a great yogi master in Tibet area. He states, all that pleases the heart and mind of the spiritual masters and the 3 jewels, which would be the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, all that benefits others is virtue, that which we need to accomplish. And there's another story in the book, a longer story. You can go and read that as well. So never doubt the benefits of small actions. There are many stories which conclude that even very simple actions yield great results. Note that the most of these stories are about ordinary people, and the stories involving great effort and difficulty are about monks, and in some cases nuns as well. This demonstrates another of the benefits of practicing Buddhism as a householder. Okay, so that gets us through the essence of chapter 5. So now let's go ahead and move on to chapter 6. This one is on the second training. So we're moving now from ethics, the basic principles of that, into meditation. And one of the core parts of this meditation is referred to as the 6 perfections. And so that's part of what we're going to be looking at here today. So meditation is the longest part of each path in this book. The reason for that is that the primary purpose of these classes, based on the book and the reasons for the book itself, was that it was a focus on our meditation, on learning and understanding these different principles and so forth. And so those 3 parts that I've mentioned, the ethics, meditation, and then the insight or wisdom, are keys to this. But it's about practice. And so the book is very much about these practices. So we're learning to meditate by training the mind. It's not always easy to accomplish. It requires rewiring our brain. That's part of why it's not easy. This means unwiring some of your existent habits and forming new neural connections that reinforce the pattern, associated with the practices of meditation. In brief, this takes patience and persistence. Those are 2 words I use all the time, especially with new people, sometimes with myself. It takes patience and persistence to do this. It does not happen overnight. It is much like learning to play a musical instrument. Unless you are a savant, it takes hours and hours of practice and rehearsal, even by great masters. Research shows that accomplished masters have done, this is in Masters of Buddhism, have done over 10,000 hours of meditation practice. 10,000 hours. Do the math, figure out. It's very common in our practice in the West, meditation practices of all kinds, to do 20 minutes a day. Well, do the math and see what that works out to. It's in the book too. Why do you want to do this? What's our motivation here? Are you really committed? You need to ask yourself these kind of questions. As noted before, we pursue Buddhism, or you have this clearly identified so that it should be the first thing that you think about whenever you sit down to meditate, as well as a constant reminder throughout the day. So a constant awareness of our purpose is very important here. What if you are just exploring or find it something that you just like doing? That's actually quite a few people fit in that or those categories, but not something that you really want to be single point focused on, the time, the commitment to do it. Meditation can be beneficial in many ways to many different people with different motivations, and that's okay. The key is knowing about what your motivation is. The Buddha his was liberation from dukkha's, the sufferings. My focus is on those who are serious practitioners and whose goal is liberation in this lifetime. Of course, I'm more than willing to help anyone who seeks my assistance to the best of my ability, regardless of what your intention is or whether you seek that level or not. But my wish is for everyone to seek liberation. The Dzogchen Pompa Rinpoche wrote, "We must keep our goal of liberation in mind, or else our efforts might become half-hearted, and if they are, they won't work." So, training the mind. Training the mind is the essence of what we talk about in terms of meditation. Training the mind is central to Buddhist practice, to the process of developing awakened consciousness. So that's part of what we're doing, is awakening our consciousness and not just letting it kind of buzz in and buzz out without even noticing what it's doing. The purpose is to realize your innate happiness, our ingrown happiness, that can then be carried forward into the rest of your day and night. Like learning any other skill, it takes time and practice for the brain to develop a new pattern of synaptic connections among the affected neurons in our brain. Both the brain and the experience grow and develop with practice. As your brain changes over time, you will grow and develop even further. One of the most basic of all the practices is the principle of mindfulness. In short, we need to be mindful of all that we think, say, and do. This means paying attention, focus. Our minds often wander off to memories of the past, and we may replay them over and over again. Or we may think about the future, planning, imagining, fantasizing. We spend a great deal of time in a daydream state. Instead, the principle of mindfulness is to focus on the present moment, now. What are we doing now? Buddhist philosophy goes so far as to say that time is nothing but a series of moments. Bing, 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 bing. Our job is to learn to focus on each of them throughout the day and night. Now, that reference, and actually the individual ones are so tiny that we would not be able to actually look at or understand each one in our brain consciousness. But it gives us the idea that moment by moment, you need to pay attention to these things. You can think of the development of mindfulness as a process with levels. And so one approach to that is, number one, ordinary mindfulness, which is the baseline and actually not much of mindfulness at all, just brief and momentary, kind of a natural thing that happens. Number two is present moment focus. So now it requires some intention to focus, paying attention to self and other right now. Mental focus, number 3, is paying attention to thoughts and mind itself. So we're digging deeper as a part of that. Number 4 is the true nature of mind, paying attention to awareness or emptiness in some cases. So this is often in Buddhism considered to be a deeper level of understanding, deeper than just mind itself, but the awareness, our ability to be aware. And then number 5 is sometimes referred to as pure view, paying attention to the sacred nature of all beings, sounds, thoughts, and phenomena. This is one that we see when we get to the path of Tantra. Since there are different approaches to emptiness, I've listed it before pure view, but in most advanced forms of emptiness actually follow the development of pure view. Each of these are first done as a practice, then they are applied off the cushion in our daily activities. Notice the common thread, paying attention. To apply this principle, we need to focus on one thing at a time, no multitasking. It helps to slow down and be more deliberate, more relaxed. Thich Nhat Hanh provided a good role model in this regard. Slow down, one thing at a time. To go a little deeper, there are 2 parts of the principle of mindfulness. These are usually described as mindfulness and awareness. These are synonyms in the English language, but have different applications in the context of meditation, although we'll see those words reversed in some cases in terms of meaning. So mindfulness generally refers to paying attention to the object of focus. This requires training our cerebral cortex, our ability to focus our attention. Awareness, on the other hand, means paying attention to whether we are being mindful at any particular moment, called metacognition, thinking about thinking. It involves paying attention and monitoring whether or not we actually are paying attention. The latter is sometimes referred to as the watcher. It takes some practice to develop this skill. Awareness engages the primal parts of the brain. We become alert to what is going on as we practice and train the mind. We train our brain to be alert to whether or not we are remaining focused, not normal for the brain. So training our brain is all about repetition. We do many, many, many short sessions is the ideal. When we begin, many will experience what has often been described as monkey mind, a mind that just won't settle down. In contrast, when you are instructed to keep your mind continuously busy, it seems there is nothing to think about. But the goal is to settle your mind so that we can begin to experience the inner peace and joy of awakened consciousness. This combines study, contemplation, and meditation. The best way to train the mind is to set aside a specific time and location for regular daily practice. The best times to practice are either early in the morning, when you get up first as soon as you can after getting up, and late evening just before you retire. In addition, engage in mini meditations, not many like lots of, but many like tiny. Okay, tiny meditations at any time during the day, along with present moment mindfulness. We always want to be mindful as we are doing these things, and whether or not we are doing them. So most advanced meditators are able to maintain a state of meditative awareness along with innate happiness continuously, more or less. The best known location is one for meditation is one that is quiet, where you will not be disturbed, and where you can sit comfortably in a chair or on the floor or cross-legged, or on a cushion or pad, a variety of ways. You pick up what works best for you. Some like to enhance the atmosphere as well with things like candles or incense, and sacred objects, and that kind of thing. But none of those are actually necessary. If you like them, if you feel it helps, then yes, definitely engage those, but they're not absolutely necessary. Use them as you see fit. Wear comfortable clothing, generally something soft and loose fitting. 3 yards of cotton fabric in the color of your choice makes a nice meditation shawl. When cool or cold, when it's warm, that may be a little too much. Meditation can be categorized in many different ways. One is to differentiate between meditation with and without signs. What does that mean? In general, meditation with signs has a specific point of focus, an object like a candle, a picture, a cross, etc., or a thought, a saying, a chant, or a visualization. Most forms of meditation are active. Meditation without signs involves either a different, diffused focus, or a focus on the sense of emptiness, or the vast openness with no object. Meditators who have achieved a state known as pure awareness with no sense of self, time, or space are at that level. Now, those are very advanced levels. Those are the kind of things that we will see usually at the level of Dzogchen. Sometimes it can happen earlier than that, but that's basically where we're likely to encounter it. So, back to meditation. Here we will examine 2 categories, Shamata and Vipassana. Shamata is single-pointed calm abiding. Some just call it single-pointed, and others call it calm abiding. They put them together as single-pointed calm abiding. We abide in stillness of body, speech, and mind to train the mind to focus your attention and then to rest in that awareness. It seems simple enough, but recall that the core of our brain is structured for survival. This means that it is constantly looking for danger. This is famously known as monkey mind. And the first goal is to train the mind to let go of that tendency and to rest while remaining attentive with mental calm. This takes patience and persistence. There are many options. The most common is to focus on your breath. It's like we started out, as it goes in and out. But you can also focus on an object. It can be a real object of some kind, or it can be imagined. So even the Yitta meditations, the Tibetan Buddhism, are a series of increasingly complex visualizations that include the purpose of training your mind to remain in single-pointed calm abiding. So we have, I know you can't see them here, but we have the Tanka paintings around the center here. And so those are examples of yidams that we would use for practices in Tantra. And of course, we'll get to that later on. But it is most important in the beginning to stay with these basic principles. So Vipassana meditation, compared to Shamatha, is about special insight into the true nature of mind. It's considered to be transcendent, non-conceptual wisdom, generally considered to be the ultimate. In the beginning, this is an analytical meditation to understand the interdependent nature of all that is. As this grows, it will be supplanted by non-conceptual direct experience of the true nature of mind until the need for analysis fades away. And you gain confidence in this transcendent wisdom. The practices described here are the essence of all core meditation practices and form the foundation upon which the others are built. You must first build a solid foundation before adding walls and a roof. In addition, these meditations facilitate training our mind so that everything becomes meditation, moving you closer to liberation in this lifetime. What you do off the cushion is equally or more important than what you do on the cushion in formal meditation. It's all about meditation. That is how most new students view Buddhism. I think it's just about meditation. Nothing else matters. But that's not it at all. They want to learn how to meditate for a variety of reasons, but rarely to attain liberation, let alone to attain liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. We call it practice. Why? Because it's practice for the rest of your day, what you do when you get up off of the cushion. The idea is to do something that will change your life every minute of every day and night. To do this, you need to change your worldview, the way you see and experience things. That is why you train your mind through meditation and other practices. As the Dzogchen Panlop Rinpoche writes, when we join practice with day-to-day life, every corner of our world offers us a way to explore wakefulness. Whether we're in a shrine hall or on the street, go outside and meditate, sit on a park bench, breathe the fresh air, look up in the sky, explore, go lightly, enjoy. So now we get to the actual process of doing these meditations. So we start with shamatha, single-pointed calm abiding. So single-pointed refers to an object of focus, usually something physical or small. Calm abiding refers to mental calm. We relax our brain. We feel it. Shamatha is critical foundation for all that follows. Padmasambhava taught this in the following stages: stillness of body, speech, and mind, of object, of bindu, of hollow body with a bindu, yidam, and no object. Now, you may not know what all those terms mean, but we'll get to them later on. The practice in each case is the same, only the object of your focus changes. It becomes increasingly challenging and complex, training the mind in steps. These help us on the path to realizing the true nature of mind and liberation. The master teacher, Pema Chodron, offers this advice: don't worry about perfection. Just be there each moment as best you can. When you realize you've wandered off again, happens to us all, simply very lightly acknowledge that. This light touch is the golden key to reuniting with our openness. Good instructions. The most common problem with this practice is, as I mentioned, monkey mind. There is a tendency to try to force the mind to block thoughts. There is a story often used in tradition that compares this with trying to tame a wild horse. If you are harsh and aggressive with the horse, it will respond in kind. However, if you are quiet and gentle, it also will respond in kind. As the movie Horse Whisperer pointed out, if you've seen that movie. Another analogy is trying not to think of pink elephants. Bing, there they come. The more you try, the more they appear in your mind. Instead of just focus on the object of focus, not what you are trying to avoid. So if thoughts come up, just refocus your attention. Always focus, focus, focus. Single-pointedly with mental calm. Unlike some systems, there is no counting and no magic words either. Okay? So that's one way that these are different than a lot of forms of particularly customary meditation things that are not based on Buddhism, particularly Tibetan Buddhism. Keep your back comfortably straight, sitting upright. Take a few deep breaths, Slowly exhaling them. So you take a breath in and then slowly out. Then focus your attention on whatever object that you're using for that session. Now, most importantly, relax your brain. Feel your head relax, and then your body. Not too tight, not too loose, like a bale of hay with the strings cut, if you've ever seen those. Pop, and they just get, they don't completely fall apart, but they get loose. So, Shamata of Body, Speech, and Mind. The first one of these. As previously mentioned, Padmasambhava recommended doing most of these practices for a period of 3 days. Because of time constraints in the lives of most householders, I recommend either twice daily for 1 week or once daily for 3 weeks until you are confident in the practice. Frequent short sessions are best. Now we're going to do 2 forms of meditation here. So if you do 2 sessions, then you get your 3 in over 3 days. And then you do the second one, 3 sessions also. There are 2 sessions per day, but 3 times, 3 days. Okay, so shamatha with body, speech, and mind. Practice the twice daily for 1 week or once daily for 3 weeks. Sessions may be divided into smaller multiple times each day. Now, when we have these 2 practices, they're very similar to each other. You can actually combine them together as one practice, or you can treat them separately, in which case it might be useful to do one in the morning, one in the evening, or you could even do 2 in the morning at different times and 2 at the evening in different times. So it's up to you, whatever works for you. First, we set our intention. As I mentioned before, I do this practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is, you can say that, or if you have some other intention, that's fine too. You just substitute it for that line. And then we recite, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, in order to enable all sentient beings to attain liberation, in this case. We do that 3 times. Then the actual practice here, the shamatha of body, speech, and mind. Calm your body into its natural state, the posture of stillness. On the outer level, stop all physical activity. That's actual stillness. The inner level, stop the Dharma activity. It mentions prostrations, but that would be an outer one in that case. And as a secret level, stop working with vital energies. Those are actually referrals to advanced practices, but you want to let all of those things go and just focus on calming your body. Then silence your speech. Here, into this natural state is quiet. On the outer level, there is no conversation. On the inner level, there are no religious discussions or teachings. Even reading could be an obscuration in this case. And at the secret level, there are no mantras. In Tibetan Buddhism, we often recite mantras. So in this case, not even mantras. It's quiet. And then relax your mind into this natural state. Emptiness, or at least no thoughts. So on the outer level, there's no judgment or conceptualization. On the inner level, there are no good thoughts or Dharma practices. And on the secret level, there is this sense of vast openness, like space or a clear sky. So we relax and let it come naturally. It's the calm abiding. This does not involve focus on breath or any other object of meditation, but just settling or letting go. So we let go and let be. Sit in stillness as long as you can, but if you become distracted, just take another breath, relax, refocus your attention on mental calm. At the end of our practices, this goes throughout the book, we dedicate, by the merit of this practice, may I attain liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. Now that will change with different practices as we go through. And then for post-meditation, so these are suggestions that have been added in here for you beyond the formal part of your meditation. So throughout the day, look for opportunities to remain still in body, speech, and mind. Now, I did mention that kind of thing before, that we could always look for opportunities in our day to fit things in this way. And so that's what is being referred to here as well. And when unable to remain still, remain mindful of all that you think, say, or do. So if you're not still, you're thinking about something, pay attention to what you're thinking about or what you're doing, and so forth. So the second practice then for this next week is Shamata with a small object. So the next phrase is Shamata with signs. And so some object of focus, real or imagined. Here we change our focus to a small object. Now here it's probably going to, if you don't have practice with this kind of thing, it's probably best to select a physical object of some kind as a part of this. It can be a pebble, a candle, a picture, or some other small object. But it should be something small and simple. So place it a few feet away from you on the floor or perhaps on a table. If thoughts or other distractions arise, just let them go and then refocus your attention on the object. It's better to do several short quality meditations than one longer meditation during each session. So let's say that you've set aside a half an hour to do your practice. You can do it in 5-minute blocks. Okay, you get several sessions in as a part of that, just like learning to play the guitar. Okay, so then the specific instructions here are, again, to practice daily for 1 week or once daily for 3 weeks. The intention is exactly the same. Now, so that's the part where that, and the next one is the refuge. So those parts could be left out if you're actually combining them into one practice. Or you could do just the practice of your body and then do the part, add in the part with an object. So Shamata with signs. Take a few deep breaths, relax your brain, just as we did before. Then begin with stillness of body, speech, and mind, as we did before. Then focus your attention on the small pebble or other small object. So this is the unique part of this, for as long as you can. If you lose your focus, just refocus and then continue. And then that's the actual practice. And so then we do a dedication. If you've combined them together, just do one dedication. And so the post-meditation is to arise gently, leading your life in a meditative fashion. So you imagine that everything is meditation as you go about your day. Also referred to as meditative equipoise. So continue in a mental calm and mindfulness just as much as possible 24/7. So those are the basic instructions. If you haven't got much experience with this, most likely it's going to take a bit of effort to do these kind of things and over again. But eventually it gets better. So just briefly then to close down for today, stages of Shamatha meditation. His Holiness the 12th Galwang Drukpa wrote, I instruct my students that the natural state of mind is the main thing, awareness itself. We should not limit that to any particular object of meditation or goal or physical posture. It has to be brought into everyday life. So the practices are they're practices, but they are practice for everyday life. Okay, so that's very important. And then we tend to overdo everything, he says. Such conceptual actions just create more karma. And so consider non-doing, non-action for a while and leaving things as they are. Very good advice. So the Buddha said to follow the middle way, not too much, not too little. So think moderation of all things. I think that's a very practical way of applying it, particularly in the context of being a householder practitioner. So for dedication, through the merit of my practice, may I attain liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. Through the merit of my practice, may I attain liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. Through the merit of my practice, may I attain liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. So next week, we'll pick up the second part of what I originally organized as the third week, or third class. And so there we're looking at the path of altruism in chapter 7. This goes into the wisdom and insight categories. And they can be kind of deep, let's say, and difficult to do. But it's helpful that we at least understand some of these characteristics and qualities that are a part of the tradition. So we do include those. Remember, that's the third one of these various sets as we go through there. So first we start off with our focus on just the attention to something, and then the ethics, and then we go to the practice itself, and then we go to the wisdom or insight part. So again, email me if you have any questions or comments that you would like to make on the class, and I will do my best to include those, or in some cases I may just send back an individual message depending on how general the questions are and how suitable they might be for the larger audience. So please abide softly and deeply with pure awareness and loving kindness and compassion for all beings, always and always. And pray for peace. Thank you very much.